welcome to In the Zone, number 44, and we have got CTV6 royalty here. Mr. Bruce Holladay, welcome.
Thank you. This is the wrong side of the camera for me, but for Mr. Zimmerman, I'll do just about anything.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so everybody that sees CTV, whether they see Paul's show, my show, football, basketball, you sort of got your fingers in it.
In some ways, yeah. At some point, we hand it over to the true professionals to come in and actually make the content interesting.
There you go.
I guess I'm the guy that keeps it all running behind the scenes.
There you go. And we always thank you, yes. So tell us about where you were born and raised. I know it's not far from here.
Well, geez, if from here, it's not very far at all. It's just on roughly the corner of Kearney and Vine. Spent a little time also over on Manor Park Drive, so on the other side of town. And yeah, product of East China schools and graduated in 1995.
Okay. Give me a little background of the family, mother, father, siblings.
Mom was an RN and worked at River District Hospital most of her career. My dad worked for the state in Port Huron at the Family Independence Agency. It's had a lot of names over the years, so I can't remember them all. Two siblings. I'm the oldest, and we're all 3 years apart. So my sister Jeannie lives over in Grand Rapids, and she works in education. And my sister Joanna is up in Marysville, and she also is a Spanish teacher.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Another teacher in the family.
A lot of them.
And you went to St. Clair High School. Yeah. So give us some of the names of your teachers that you remember.
Oh, geez, this would be hard. Well, I mean, I was a band kid, so it's easy to remember Mr. Daggett and Mr. Fouché, Mrs. Mathis, Mrs. Higgins now, probably Buslip at the time. Yep. Boy, I had a lot of them. Mrs. Cedar, Mr. Cedar. Mr. Cedar is the connection to Channel 6 and CTV.
Oh, okay.
I think, Paul will have to correct the story later, but he was looking for some volunteers, and as the story's been told, Paul said, I got this, or Mr. Cedar said, I got this kind of nerdy kid that might be interested in doing some TV stuff, and the rest is history. So that's Mr. Cedars who's hooked me up with, is the person who hooked me up with Paul.
And remember those big cameras?
I do, yeah, the big heavy cameras. It's just amazing to see how the technology's changed. Your iPhone will now shoot in 8K. It's miles better than those big old cameras, but that's just technology in general.
Yep. So where'd you go to college?
So I started out at SC4, and which is a great place to start out. I got a lot of my general elective credits done, but more importantly, it gave me the opportunity to work with Paul establishing Channel 6. I had the opportunity to work at WIFN, which is in Marine City, the AM radio station. Hooked up with John Hill at St. Clair County Community College. And
I was in that program.
Took his program. It's a great program, and look at us now.
Yeah, so, exactly.
And I also worked for what was at the time Heron Communications. It became Comcast eventually, and they had so Channel 6 is the sort of the small local regional. Channel 3 was the larger region. It covered basically the whole viewing area that Heron covered at the time. And they had this production truck that would go to concerts. It had 3 cameras on board. It would go to, I spent a lot of time at Romeo and Richmond football games, and I was the tech who would drive that truck out and work with a group of volunteers once I arrived on the scene to cover those types of events. So I mean, that was great experience that helped me further down the line and gave me the opportunity to stay local. Then I made my way over to Michigan State University, where I finished up my bachelor's degree, worked in the Lansing television market, worked for MSU for their PBS station and some of the other programming that they produced before going down to my first, I guess, real gig. And then since then, when you're in education, some find it interesting and challenging to continue on. So I did a master's program through U of M Flint and an education specialist degree I received, I think in 2013 from Oakland University.
Okay. So you did some of this stuff for the stations back in the mid-90s then?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a great time. It was very different.
Oh yeah, very different.
There was some digital technology, but a lot of it was very tactile, as I say. It was a lot of hands-on, lots of videotape and fine-tuning, cameras. And
when you said Heron Communications, the first thing that came to my mind was my first cable bill when I moved out on my own.
Yeah.
Take a guess how much it was a month for cable back then.
In 1995, What package did you have?
Actually, this would have been before that. This would have been like 1986.
Oh, well, listen, I feel like that was a premium service back then. I'm going to go, it was $26.
Well, $7.95.
Really? Oh, well.
It might have been basic.
Because now it's like $200, I think.
Right.
So one of the perks for my family when I was working for Heron was we got free cable, free pay-per-view, everything to the house. You just turned it on and it was
Boom,
there. It's
worked.
one of the perks of the job, I
Okay.
suppose.
Now, for some people that don't know you, you've always got 2 or 3 jobs or things going on at a time.
Some people have like legitimate hobbies. They like to golf or
Right.
do other things. And I think work has been my hobby in some ways. I'm just a curious person who's interested in different aspects of kind of life in general. But yeah, so after college, my career path took me to WDIV, which is Channel 4, the
Yep.
NBC affiliate in town, where I was started out as a technician, or they called him a broadcast engineer, so running camera, doing audio, switching, technical
Yep.
director stuff. And but I kind of knew by that point my heart was in directing, and so after a few months I was able to convince the programming department at Channel 4 to give me a chance.
Give me a shot.
Yeah, and it often happens. They started training me, but their 6-week plan to train me was a 1-week plan because then an emergency happened.
Right.
Somebody called
Somebody
in
didn't
sick,
come in.
and it's like, all right, here you go.
Boom.
So luckily, luck and fate, I suppose, were on my side that day, and it went well. And so, yeah, I truly enjoy it. I'm still there from time to time as my schedule permits. And I was thinking the other day as I've been trying to avoid you for a while, but
Nothing
finally you got me
personal,
in. Yeah, no, it's definitely nothing personal. But Channel 4 is not unlike teaching, not unlike working here at CTV. It's a public service, and
Sure.
so I'm not a reporter. I don't go out and cover the news. I'm not an anchor. I don't even really pick the content of the
Right.
newscasts.
Produce that.
But I have a small part in relaying it to Metro Detroit. And so I think everybody that works there, I can speak for everyone, like regardless of their role, we're part of that team that helps bring you, accurate information so
Sure.
that you can know what's going on in your community and make decisions.
Now, what programs would you have, say, produced or directed?
Over the years,
Yeah.
a lot of news.
Okay. So 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock?
Yeah, so when you're the fill-in person, as I often am, I've directed every single show.
Okay.
Not everybody has. If you're usually a
Right,
night
your
side person, you're in the
shift.
night side, and there are nuances to every show. So I guess, lucky me, I know all of them across the board. So I've done all the news. We do Flashpoint and some other political affairs programming. Occasionally we'll do a special. I'm trying to think of the one that recently, but you see them on air from time to time.
Have you done parade work?
I've done parade
Thought
work.
so, yeah.
I'll be down on Woodward Avenue at
Yep.
about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, Thanksgiving morning.
Right.
Every year I say, this is it. This is too early. I'm getting too old for this. But
Because that's when the setup needs to be, right?
they
Check.
start setting up a few days before.
Right.
I'm lucky in a lot of ways. My job doesn't involve any technical aspect of setting up equipment. So I am fortunate that I kind of walk in 48 hours after people have been like working nonstop to get it set up and work the production day. And then, I hate to say it, but when we're done at noon, I look around and make sure I can't be helpful, but it is a different union that does that kind of work. So I just leave and they tear it all down. So it's early, but this will be my 22nd year. Maybe I didn't do it the first couple of years I was there, but certainly 20th year of kind of working with the same folks. And so even though it's one of those, I can't believe I signed up for this again. Once we get down on Woodward Avenue, we've all been doing it so long, we all just fall into place
Right.
and have a nice day.
Okay. Are you able, now, an odd question, but are you able to take the kids down to the parade at all with that or no?
Last year was the first year.
Okay.
My wife Jenny decided, let's take the kids and see how they like it. And I think they had a nice time. So that may be a tradition. And they were pretty close to there's a certain area called the TV zone.
Sure.
Obviously where all the cameras are.
Yep.
So they were sort of nearby and got to see Dad
Behind the
running around in the
scenes
streets
and-
the whole time.
So, okay, so let's talk about meeting your wife. Where did you meet your wife?
Met my wife at Channel 4.
Ooh,
What do you know?
okay.
So she grew up near Ann Arbor in a town called Manchester in Washtenaw County. In high school at some point knew she wanted to be a producer for TV. So she did some research. She did a job shadow at Fox 2, and she decided that the University of Missouri was one of the premier broadcast journalism schools. So they ran their own NBC affiliate. It was very hands-on. So, geez, I don't know if I would have done this, but she packed up and did college out in Missouri, and her first few jobs in TV were there. And around, I'm going to say it was November of 2001, felt the desire to come back home, and WDIV hired her as a producer. So the rest is history.
Okay. And 2 children.
2 children. Eleanor just turned 9. Emerson is 6. And I'm tired all the time. But it's
exactly.
That's truly my best job and my favorite job, hanging out with them and trying to be a dad. Yep. So it's all about balance. And it's funny, I think it's different today, but certainly compared to some of the folks I went to school with, I maybe had kids a little later in life, and I think there are pros and cons to both. Sometimes I think, boy, my friends who had kids at 22,
right,
they were 32 when their kids were 10, and I'm gonna be 40 something. It's just a different energy level. You really
I would think you're somewhere in the middle though, because I know some people have had kids much later than that.
Sometimes after a long, hard day, I'm like, I wonder how 32-year-old Bruce would have felt about this. Like, he might have had a little more energy. So.
Does the 9-year-old know everything yet?
Just about. Well, I think you officially become a know-it-all at like 11.
Okay.
So
I wouldn't remember where that was.
She's not there. Yeah.
So when did you decide that you wanted to get into the television realm? Was it high school then?
It was, and I think in large part it was because of the opportunity I had. I think there were 2 things concurrently that happened. One was meeting Paul Dingaman and working at Channel 6. Mm-hmm. The other was we had a career day my senior year. It was like January. It was probably like right before the end of the semester or something. And the owner of the radio station down on Marine City Highway came in. And you had to pick 3 things to go to. So I think I probably went to teacher, I went to broadcaster, and some other thing. And he was the last one of the day. His name was David Barr. And everyone wanted to get out of there. I kind of hung back. And it wasn't necessarily like me to be super inquisitive or like ask a lot of questions, but I went up and said, I wonder if I could get a tour of your radio station. He said, sure, come on down. So I got the tour. I thought it was really neat. And my dream had been fulfilled. And he said, so what can we do for you? I said, I haven't really thought about it. What do you mean? He's like, well, do you need an internship? Do you need a... and I don't know, in the 90s, at least when I went through school, internships were not as big as they are now.
Right.
Like, that's kind of a college thing. But I said, sure. So I started working down there Wednesdays. And within about a month, there was an opening. So then I started working there after school a few days a week and on the weekends. And so I had 2 sides. It was great. I had the TV side through Channel 6. And, back in the day, that was schlepping cameras all over town and setting them up. And it sometimes took longer to set up the equipment than the actual event lasted. And then I had WIFN giving me that end of the experience down in Marine City. So before that, I remember in high school at one point, I loved Mrs. Mathis. She was my my literature and composition teacher. And I just saw like the connection she made with kids, and I thought, I'm going to be an English teacher. And then I got involved with some of the business programs there. Mr. Therrett, Ms. Durow, Mr. Barnes, and they had career and technical education. Mm-hmm. And I felt like I had a real aptitude for like accounting, and I thought, no, I'm going to be an accountant. And I think I might have surprised my parents so even when I was at SC4, I think I was still thinking business. Sure. My dad took me over to MSU to sign up as he did in the 90s. It wasn't all online at that point. And I said, Dad, I actually went to it was called telecommunication one, because I think I want to do something, in broadcasting. So, and he was cool with it. He's like, he didn't really comment either way, but so that's kind of when I solidified, yep, this is the opportunity. And again, a great testament to SC4, because I took business classes. Yep. I took John Hill's broadcasting classes, and I did it at the fraction of what it would have cost to do the same thing at MSU. Felt empowered to like say, I changed my mind, Sure. But then I knew more when I got to MSU.
Now you sort of had I won't call it a U-turn, but I'll say you got the off-ramp, you got into education too.
I know.
Explain that.
Weird, huh?
Explain that.
So again, there's a name that'll keep coming up, and that's Paul Dingaman. One day, I don't know if he called me, I may have stopped in at the office, and he said, hey, St. Clair Tech, career and technical education up the road here in Marysville, is looking for an AV teacher. which sounded odd to me. I thought of like the AV cart you push in the
The
hallway.
overhead projector.
Yeah, and I remember talking to Paul about it, and he's like, I don't think I'm interested in it. Here, take it. And so I took it and I applied. I think people who are in education, the seed was planted at some point. I had considered. I thought maybe one day I would teach at the university. Now I had no idea, that would be a PhD and everything that entailed. But I think I knew that, and I also had great teachers who I connected with. So I saw. This was maybe a little more subconscious, but I wanted to be that for other students. Like, there were the teachers I knew I could go to that were super helpful. So I gave it a shot, and quite honestly, the first year, I wasn't totally sure what it was going to look like, so I still kind of worked at Channel 4 full time. I'd work nights there, again, before kids, just in case. And I was doing the daytime thing, but it stuck, and it's my area of passion and expertise. So it was a great opportunity to share that with kind of the next generation. I taught for about 15 years, and I do now. It's pretty amazing. Have a network of students working all over the world. Not everyone went into the pathway. I hope that everyone took something away. There's the curriculum that's on the surface, and there are all the things that from working here. It's teamwork, it's problem solving, it's using technology, and so there are some transferable skills even for those students. I hope that didn't wind up going into it.
So how many years were you up at?
I was only there, I'm going to say 2 years, and then. It's always about connections, right? So my wife was working at the time at the Henry Ford Museum in Greenfield Village, and not to make the story too long, but somebody came in who worked at Lapeer County Education and Technology Center, and I don't know how they got talking, but as it turned out, Lapeer County EdTech was looking to start a program similar to the one that we had started in St. Clair County at St. Clair Tech, and so. Conversations being what they were, and negotiations kind of went on, and next thing you know, I picked up shop and moved over to Lapeer County to work there and build a program for them. I remember the conversation. My wife and I were living in Berkeley at the time. I like to drive. That'll be another theme. Like I put a lot of miles on cars. But I remember talking to her about this new gig, and what I didn't realize was I think for those couple of years I was in St. Clair, she would come home and tell me about her PR job at the Henry Ford Museum in Greenfield Village, and I'd talk about school. And there was a point one night where she was just asking a lot of questions, and I stopped her and I said, wait, do you want to apply for the job in St. Clair? Like, I don't know why I hadn't considered it, but she said something like, yeah, well, I see you're enjoying it, and I always sort of wanted to teach. So she applied for and got the job in St. Clair. So
same job you had?
Same job I had,
okay.
Yep. She's way more qualified and did much more for the program than I did. But so then, I mean, what a great opportunity as a family to work in a similar industry, different schools, so there's not the pressure of being in the same building every day, but similar schedules and passions and those things. So that has been great for our family too.
So now you went from there and had a couple stops before you came back to St. Clair.
I did, a few stops. So I think the theme you may hear is, you have to kind of know yourself, right?
Yeah.
So I'm a builder. I like to see problems and figure out how to make it happen. So as luck would have it, a job opened up at Oxford High School, and they were looking to build. They had a program that needed a little bit of tender loving care. Sure. And I talked to the superintendent, and I really felt confident in the work they were doing in my place there. These Lapeer County and St. Clair County were CTE programs, which students from all over the county come in, and then they all kind of come back home. So you don't have a mascot or a fight song, but it's very different. And there's a lot to like about that
Today
model.
It's called RESA, correct?
Yep. Mm-hmm. There's a lot to like about that model, especially for kids. You've been hanging out with the same kids for 10 or 11 years, and now all of a sudden you go to a new school where you meet new people from all over the county who are interested in the same thing you are. So, but there was a piece in my mind where I had to know what working at a high school was like. And I'm thankful I did. I had a number of great years there. We built the program. It continues to be successful today. So that was one stop. After I had kids, Oxford was because they were happy with the things I did, I spent a lot of time there, and there were events and other things that needed to be covered, and it was just a little too much of a commitment at the time with a new baby being born. So again, somebody had just reached out over in Genesee County at their Career and Technical Education Center and said, hey, we have a bond, we're going to do some modifications on our building here, you want to come on board? And that felt like the right thing to do at the time, and so I did. So that was all my teaching. Before you fall asleep any more than you already are.
I'm good.
At some point, back when I was in Lapeer, I remember a conversation with superintendent who was leaving. Hey, it's good to see you, thanks for all of your work. And he did one of those things you see in the movie all the time. We shook hands, we parted, and he turned around and he said, Bruce, you're going to make a good superintendent one day. And I was like, no.
Yeah, right.
Me? No, I'm the classroom guy who likes to hang out with kids and and teach them about this profession that I know about. Okay, whatever. So okay, have a nice day. But that planted a seed. It's sometimes about the seed, and so that's when I started working on the degree and thought, okay, maybe I can contribute on a different level that's not in the classroom. Because administration can be lonely sometimes because you don't have the experience every day, day in and day out with kids. But at the same time, you're blessed with the opportunity of having an impact on a larger number of kids. Sure. You're just trickling it down a little bit differently. It's not directly to the kids, it's supporting staff and trying to offer opportunities. So I went to Taylor for a few years. Taylor was great. I was honest with him when I went down there that I didn't know if I was going to be there forever, but that was my first foray into administration. And I liked it, but it was a long way. It was driving from my home to Taylor every single day. Yeah. But I'm grateful for that opportunity, and we did some fun things there, and there'll always be a little soft spot in my heart for Taylor. Yeah. But I knew I wanted to get closer to home, and so Owasso was looking for a high school principal. I said, and they did a lot with CTE, so I thought this is a good fit. Owasso is an amazing community. I love it. But when I heard about the opportunity in St. Clair, I thought, okay, I'm 1 year in Owasso, I have to make a decision. Either we're moving west or we're moving east. One of the two. And what's it going to be? Even though I felt like kind of a schmuck, sort of, for leaving after a year. They certainly understand. They had another great administrator that was able to step right in. So I don't carry a lot of guilt. Right. But when that opportunity presented itself to come back to St. Clair.
It was sort of a now or never in your mind.
In my mind, yep. Mm-hmm. Yep, for sure.
Okay. So tell us about your new position. You're at St. Clair Middle School.
St. Clair Middle School.
You're the principal.
Principal.
Who's your assistant principal?
The assistant principal is Renee Belke.
Okay.
She is a new administrator who hails from South Lake. And so far we've been a really good team. You really do have to have a solid team where your, I don't know if I want to call it philosophies, but maybe philosophies and your processes and everything kind of need to align because you're working independently often. Sure. I mean, we connect multiple times per day, but we have to be united in what our priorities are. So
now, being from St. Clair, growing up in St. Clair, you went away, but you still feel connected. You came back. Did you look at the roster at St. Clair Middle and go, oh, some of these names?
A little bit. Okay. So I didn't do it intentionally, but over time, and the further I get into it, the more connections I'm making.
Right.
And that's been actually kind of a warming experience.
So you go, Jimmy, is your dad Joe?
I've done that a couple of times. Right. Yep. Sometimes it's an uncle. Sometimes. Right. But yeah, certainly that happens. But boy, there are a lot of new names too.
Yes.
The strange thing is I've been gone for 95, 05, 15, like 30 years, let's say.
Right.
And yet I've been in town 2 times a week that entire time.
Right.
Whether it's working for Paul or visiting family in town. So I definitely drive in a lot per year. Probably here 100 times, up until that point. So it's been, I know just enough to be dangerous about the area and where things are and who some of the significant, people and community members are. But then, I'll look at that and be like, oh, I wonder
if that's Joe's kid or that's John's kid.
Yeah,
exactly.
And they usually tell me because usually their parents have said, hey, I went to school with that bozo or whatever. So.
Any mentors besides a couple obvious that we'll know?
Yeah, so Paul Dingaman, of course. What Paul did and what I try to carry through with my leadership as well is just provided opportunity. The reality is when we started CTV, none of us really knew what we were doing. You know, we had some tape decks and a
Fresh
video
and new
switcher. Yeah. We had an audio mixer, and I don't know, we covered stuff.
Right.
But he always kind of said yes and just let me do my thing, and sometimes it worked out and sometimes it didn't, but he was never mad about it. You know, we tried, and if I forgot to hit record, I forgot to hit record.
Exactly.
So certainly, I've always tried to do that, whether it's a teacher or being a building leader, you know, acknowledge and you know, add some weight to anyone's idea. Like I'll listen to any idea, and I don't always have money to make it happen, but I have support, and I'll help however I can. So from the administrative side, I really learned a lot from a couple of people. Pat Yannick, who's at St. Clair County RESA now, and he's their CTE. It's called a CTV Director, so he works there. And Pat, again, just brought like a zeal and enthusiasm and a very sort of kind approach to, you know, I was a new teacher, and at the time, Pat wasn't the director at St. Clair Tech yet, but he was, you know, in the front office and doing things, and you know, just was clear in his explanation, had great follow-up, and so I always felt like, you know, he was a go-to person I could ask questions of. We stayed connected throughout the years, and as I started looking at administration, we had lots of talks where I said, hey, I'm in town, can I stop for 20 minutes? And you know, 2.5 hours later, I'm like, oh, sorry about that, Pat. And then at Oxford High School, I think where I was really starting to consider if administration was right, there was a principal there at the time, his name was Mike Schwag, and the same thing, like down to earth with the kids, professional when he needed to be, but certainly didn't take himself too seriously. And again, like, you know, I remember conversations where he'd be like, yep, I love that idea. I don't have any money, but I love it. You know, let's move forward with it. And that just, you know, when you know you have support, you know, teachers do a lot of things for free anyway. It's just kind of in our DNA. But it's different when you know you have the backing or the support, or at least the acknowledgement of leaders.
Any defining moments over any of those jobs?
When I met my wife at Channel 4, that was really a defining moment. Yeah, but as you know, and lots of folks know, like, connections always, you know, being at the right place at the right time and building and maintaining connections and not burning bridges are super important. And so Channel 4, you know, I was working there at the time, but yeah, that was an important piece of the story to the rest of, you know, my career. When I went over to MSU, I got a job that most entry-level college students wouldn't have gotten at the TV station because I had spent some time here and I could identify all the equipment they were using. And I remember the station manager said, you know, I liked your response that you recognized all of the stuff in this room. You didn't really know how it was wired up here, but you knew what it was, and that was enough. You know, we knew that you had kind of a baseline experience. So yeah, I don't know. I've just had a lot. You know, I've been fortunate to do
a lot of cool
experiences. Lots of cool experiences. You know, some as a result of, you know, when I was, I've worked in China a couple of times, helping build a school over there. I've traveled around the world. My wife and I have done some workshops, like film workshops in Slovakia and Prague and other places. And a lot of things have been a direct result of either education or working in broadcasting.
Well, I appreciate you coming by. And there's one more thing I got to ask you. That guy that's in the room, in the other room there,
I think I see him,
keeps turning me down for an interview.
Oh, really?
So how do we get
Well, no, that's the thing. If this is Paul, I have access to the YouTube account, so I'll delete this one if you don't come and do yours next. So 45 would be a good one for him, wouldn't it? That's it. Yeah, so, okay, I'm going to work on that for you.
Thank you for being
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Yep. And truly, thank you for all you do. This has always been all about, and the reason I love it so much, like, giving the community the opportunity to tell its own story. And whether it's this show or doing Mariner football, it doesn't work without you.
We learn something every day is the idea.
Yep,
so
for
thank you again. And my phone number's there on the screen in case somebody wants to suggest somebody else. Until next time, we'll appreciate you coming by, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.